Come to order. Good morning and welcome to the Budget Committee's hearing on Poverty in America, Economic Realities of Struggling Families. I want to welcome our witnesses here with us today. This morning we will be hearing from several leaders from the Poor People's Campaign, Reverend Dr. William J. Barber II, Reverend Dr. Liz Theo Harris, Ms. Callie Greer, Ms. Kenya Alcacer, Mr. Christopher Overfelt, and Ms. Savannah Kinsey. We are also pleased to have Pastor Latasha Fields from the Christian Home Educators Support System and Pastor David Mahan from Frontline Youth Communications. And we are also honored to have Speaker Nancy Pelosi with us this morning, and I ask unanimous consent that the Speaker be permitted to sit at the dais and participate in today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered. It also is possible that we will have votes during this hearing. I ask unanimous consent that the chair be authorized to declare a recess at any time. Without objection, so ordered. I will now yield myself 5 minutes for my opening statement. Again, the hearing has come to order. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'd like to welcome once again our panel of witnesses. We appreciate you coming here to help us engage in a meaningful discussion on the character of our country and the ongoing struggle with poverty and economic injustices faced by far too many Americans. I would also like to thank Congresswoman Barbara Lee for her leadership on this issue and her work to bring attention to this ongoing crisis through the Poverty Task Force. The statistics on poverty are jarring. As of 2017, according to the census, nearly 40 million people, or more than 1 in 10 Americans, lives in poverty. But that number, as I know our witnesses will testify to, fails to account for the tens of millions of more Americans who still struggle to make ends meet. At the same time, 90% of households account for less than 23% of the nation's income. This past Sunday marked the longest period of time in U.S. history without an increase in the federal minimum wage. And overall wage growth, after adjusting for inflation, has remained nearly stagnant for 40 years. Meanwhile, housing prices have gone up dramatically in many areas of the country, tuition costs have skyrocketed, and Americans are paying more for nearly every expense. These facts are important, but they tell only part of the story. The purpose of this hearing is to shine a light on the challenges that Americans face in meeting their basic human needs. We will hear from people who experience these challenges firsthand and whose lives are directly impacted by the decisions and policies made in Washington. That's not to say that the federal government isn't already playing an important role in the lives of American families working their way up the economic ladder. Critical investments in federal programs have kept millions of Americans above the poverty line and have cut the poverty rate nearly in half over the last 50 years. Medicaid and CHIP provide health coverage to 73 million Americans, including more than 1 in 3 children. To date, 33 states and the District of Columbia have expanded their Medicaid programs to low-income working-age adults, helping to bring the nation's uninsured rate to a record low. The Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, or SNAP, provides nutrition assistance to nearly 43 million Americans each month, including 1.4 million veterans. Child Care and Development Block Grants supported nearly 800,000 families, ensuring children were cared for while parents worked to put food on the table. The Earned Income Tax Credit has lifted millions of workers out of poverty instead of being taxed into it. And in 2017, more than 5 million households received assistance with heating and cooling costs through the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, helping families stay safe and healthy. But we need to be doing far more, not less. For decades, efforts in Washington to close the gap between ongoing efforts to fight poverty and what is needed to fully address this crisis have been inadequate. But now these programs and the millions they serve are under constant attack. Rather than increasing investments in evidence-based programs that help more struggling Americans get ahead, the administration is proposing to change the way they measure the poverty rate in a backdoor attempt to cut off vital aid to potentially millions of Americans. There have also been consistent attempts by states to impose so-called work requirements on Medicaid recipients that only serve to deny health care to people. The governor of my home state, by his own admission, said his Medicaid waiver request will take potentially life-saving health care coverage away from more than 90,000 Kentuckians. And the Trump administration hasn't stopped there. They've rescinded regulations on payday loan lenders that prey on those in poverty, proposed cuts of $220 billion to SNAP, and sought to eliminate LIHEAP. Many will differ on the role of the federal government in combating poverty, but we shouldn't differ on one concept. The more we can do to lift people out of poverty, the better our budgetary future will look. Poverty is more than just a policy issue. It is a challenge to the conscience of our nation. That is why I'm thankful to have the opportunity today to learn about the real everyday experiences of our witnesses and to debunk some of the myths surrounding this vital issue. We need to be making a stronger investment in our people, all our people, so every American has the opportunity to thrive and succeed. I'm sure we will hear a lot of ideas and different points of view today as we look at ways to help working families and struggling Americans, which is the point of this hearing. Whether it's practical or aspirational or even designed to take a sledgehammer to the status quo, we want to provide a platform for community leaders and those directly impacted by federal policies to share their ideas. Once again, I would like to thank the Poor People's Campaign and our witnesses for joining us. I look forward to your testimony. Now I ask unanimous consent to submit 2 documents from the Poor People's Campaign, the moral budget and the audit, in the record. Without objection, so ordered.